This will do. It's October, y'all. It's season, all right? And I am so excited about October. Let me tell you why. One, see these glasses? I'm heading to CultureCon this weekend, and it's my first time going to CultureCon, and it's definitely been a creative conference that I've been meaning to attend for years. So I'm super excited to be going out there, supporting that event, and honestly, even getting inspiration, because one thing as a creator who, one, has created an app, and two, has to continuously create features, right? Events, partnerships, and so much more. It is so important to stay inspired. And I truly want to say that if you have an issue with staying inspired, you have got to get out the house. I personally have made it a goal of mine to ensure that I get out the house multiple times a month to be creatively inspired. That could be going to a jazz event sometimes. That could be going to an art club. That can be going to a creative conference like CultureCon, networking events, anything. Just, it's a good way to just get out your head and just kind of have a refresh and a reset. But I'm excited because they have like this space, intergalactic, futuristic theme going on. So some of my outfits just came in, but these glasses, I was like, oh, I am going to, for the month of October, I'm definitely going to be making content with these glasses or different glasses. So I hope you guys are in a theme mood because I plan on making this fun tutorials, not boring. Now, let's get into today's topic. Now that we've discussed this, we need to talk about how community, right, can help drive results for your brand. And when you think about community, I want you to think, like, what does community really mean to you? And I'll give you a few seconds to think about that, because I'll talk about what community means to me, but in general, community can mean something different to everybody, right? But we'll get into the actual definition first, and then I'll get into how I look at community, right? So I've given you some time now, so let's sit back in class. All right, now the dictionary definition is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. Another definition of community is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitude, interests, and goals. Now, I resonate with that a lot because if you think about it, that's why CultureCon itself, right, knew how to position themselves. One, it is the largest creative conference for Black creatives, right? So they know their target. CultureCon, like, they know that they want to drive culture. They have a mission-driven, statement all over the place about driving culture within the Black creative community and folks of color too, right? But it's something that didn't exist before. And ultimately, when you are building a platform or when you are solving a problem, right, in general, whether it's a product like jeans, right, or shirts, whatever it may be, you want to differentiate yourself. And we'll get into the community aspect first, but I want you to think about these things first as we get into this session, right? Because the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, how do you differentiate yourself, like your brand, right, from others? Because when you own that is what you can own in your events as well. How do you stand out? What is your value proposition? And how to drive that with events. And why do I say events? Because you're like, oh, well, you said community. Well, what's the best way to drive community? Events. That could be virtual events. That could be live in-person events. But either way, you need to make sure you know how to differentiate yourself so you can execute a certain way. But yeah, we had webinars where we were answering particular questions that our creative community needed answered, not wanted, needed. Something that they really had big pain points and problems with. And they created, getting gigs, right? Booking partnerships with brands, etc. Like a lot of the creators on our platform were pretty new to being a creator, and they're of all sizes. I mean, from a couple thousand followers on Instagram and TikTok all the way to people that had 100,000 followers and they just did not know how to monetize. They truly didn't. They did not know how to go seek a brand partnership, even outside of the marketplace, because even though we had opportunities floating in the marketplace, there's a lot of people on our platform. There was over 30,000 creators opted in alone. There's only so many gigs that get dispersed, right? So the next thing was, well, if I can't get this opportunity in your platform, how can I get it in general? So we've had webinars around that. And now we even bring them into real life events where brands can meet creators. And we continue expanding on that. And we continue bringing more and more value to the table. So this year for Afrotech, for example, we're partnered with another company that has creative networking events, and we sponsored their event. We are sponsoring their event October 27th because, one, the venue is so stellar. It's the perfect venue for us to do the following things: a networking area where brands and creators can meet, upstairs area where influencers and brands can get interviewed by one of our on-site content creators in front of our stand and repeat. So I'm excited about that as well. Then we have a deal room where we're going to have investors, founders, brands, and creators all there, where we actually want live deals being made. So there you have different sections of the event where you genuinely can win. And all you have to do is pretty much just show up, right? But overall, you need to make sure that you're showing up and showing out as a creator, how you stand out, your metrics, know your stuff. And we'll also have on-site activation showing how GEM social can be used, not just for creators, but also for brands too, how they can pitch creators can pitch brands. Even if they're like, you know what, I actually like you, I'm going to send you something right now and we'll move forward next week. They'll be able to send it directly at the event, or whether it's on their phone and they just download it and make sure that they can send it out, or they could just literally use one of our devices and we get that collaboration sent out for them on their behalf. So we want to get active opportunities going, and not a lot of events do that. Not a lot of creative events really do that nowadays. They just put people in the room, but like I actually want to have more and more activations that really get on-site opportunities happening. It's almost like how Afrotech has their on-site interviews, right? I'd love to do the same where brands have on-site not interviews, but on-site needs, and they want to find those creators there. So like if a restaurant owner pulls up and they have an hour, something on-site where they can talk to other foodies, that's the kind of value that we want to bring to more of our events. Like, so we're only going to continue focusing on having brands meet creators meeting brands, so that way we can circulate that and the community will help drive us, because guess what? When we make you happy, y'all go talk about us. And when we make brands happy, they continue spending money, right, on us. So ultimately, that is a form of marketing. If you want that word of mouth, give them a reason for them to put your word in their mouth, right? So if you're a brand right now, think about what can you offer to your audience? What can you really offer? If I am a restaurant owner, I know I go back to restaurants a lot. It's mostly because I like eating a lot. But if I'm a restaurant owner, I would have tons of tastings, wine tastings, tequila tastings, food tastings, appetizer tastings, and inviting foodies, not a one-on-one thing, but like, just have maybe like a 30-minute private session in your restaurant, in a booth dedicated to foodies. You don't have to do all these one-on-one collaborations. You could do one of many at one time with a single event. I actually reached out to a restaurant out here in downtown Houston to do this exact thing, because I wanted to actually help them. It's not even just with us. Like, yes, we're going to have this opportunity out there for creatives, but I want to actually help them, right, get more UGC content and more influencer collaborations by leveraging their own menu, because the menu's bomb. They just reopened. It's actually a brand that's not only here locally, but they're out in West Palm Beach. I've had them out there as well. They're in Miami. They're in a couple different cities. So but I see that they haven't done anything like that. So I'm like, man, this is a great opportunity to take this on, where you can invite like 5 to 10 influencers. Typically with that scenario, maybe anywhere from micro influencer to mid-tier influencer, because you don't need a macro influencer realistically, because sometimes when you book a macro influencer, they seem so out of reach with their own audience at times, because they are typically unresponsive, to be real. But if you have someone, I would say between that 10,000 through like 50,000 influencers, in my opinion, right? They're typically more actively engaged with their audience. They typically really want to build a solid relationship. They're not always managed. Not to say that they aren't. Like, there are a few influencers that I know, actually a good amount, that do have between 10 to 50,000 followers, and they are being managed, but not all of them. In fact, not the majority of them. So instead of you having to worry about going through management and they supercharging you because of the fact that they have to get their agency fee, which is understandable, because even GEM takes a fee as well. Not an agency fee though. We do not take 20 through 30%, but we take a smaller percent, like 8%, just to manage the transaction, not to manage the influencer, by the way. But outside of that, there is that extra, paywall that you have to go to that's typically way higher, right? So I would say if you just are building, those relationships with the influencer directly, like it's better, in my opinion. When you're building it with the actual manager, you're just another brand, right? And our brand is about being more intentional, right? As in the other influencer platforms out here are more like influencer discovery, but they don't really drive intentionality in the marketplace. And that's something that we need to differentiate ourselves from, right? Which is why we bring that level of intentionality to the actual events that we have, right? So that's something that I just want to bring up, because the question is, how are you going to bring intentionality to your events, right? And what can you do to do that, right? Because a lot of brands, they may start small. They may start out at a coffee shop, maybe just having a coffee shop meetup for a certain thing. You know, let's say that you sell shorts. I would easily try to have a meetup in a neighborhood coffee shop for a run club, because guess what? If you're selling like exercise, and when I say shorts, I'm thinking like basketball shorts or running shorts, you know, something that you can literally run in, right? That's a great value point. Running clubs are literally on the go. You can literally look up keywords in your niche to see like what's popular, right? So I know what's popular in my niche, you know, with brand deals, influencer collabs. Like I look up those keywords and I try to add in those keywords when I'm even having an event, because that's what stands out, right? But if you are, like I said, a brand that sells shorts that you can run in, then how can you actually leverage those popular keywords? And you remember I showed y'all on the winning format TikTok, right? Those keywords, you can still do the same thing to see what people are actually showing up for, right? And what people are actually engaging in. We don't have to always overthink the playbook, right? Because everything is pretty much a keyword game, because it shows what? Common interest. And what do people show up for in community? Another person I'm going to give a shout out to that really does great with building community is one, Collab. Collab is a social co-working club. And what they do is they're mixing the idea of, you know, bringing people together in co-working spaces, right? Where you sign up for a single membership and you get access to multiple co-working spaces, right? But the intentionality comes in on the co-working spaces on the actual marketplace, right? So if you are more interested in going to a co-working space where you not just work, but maybe you want to network with fellow founders and stuff, there are actually co-working spaces that actually match that vibe. Maybe you just want to go to a co-working space and not really be communicative and just lock in, and it's more so like, you know, you get there and you no one's bothering you. There are certain areas like that too as well, and certain co-working spaces on there. And then there's ones where it's like it's a co-working space, but it's really treated more like a community space where you really are showing up there mostly for the events that they're having, right? They have that on there too. So Collab ends up partnering with these co-working spaces to have co-working days to drive that intentionality and engagement at not just the co-working spaces, but to convince people to sign up for memberships. This was a guy that actually owned a studio at one point called Collab Social in Stafford, Texas. And he had a 4,000 square foot studio on one side and then a co-working space on the back called the Lab. So to me, that was very interesting, because he not only saw how he grew his own studio / co-working space, but he took that playbook and ended up growing it into an actual platform. And then he actually passed that lease on to somebody else who then took over his studio, and they are still on the platform. So to this day, you can still book that space. I say that to say that, like, you know, this is how you can drive intentionality, and your intentionality will allow you to pivot. When you build community, which gets into my next point, right? When you build community, you intentionally can see how to pivot, because when you are building community, you get feedback. You should be open and receptive to feedback as well. You have to take ego out when you're building a brand. I'm still doing this to this day, because you look, our brands are our babies. And Doja Cat said this earlier on a podcast today when I watched it. She said that, you know, some people are going to love your baby and some people are going to look at it like, yeah, no, like I don't even like babies, right? You know, so you have to take that as some people will care about what you're building and some people don't. But the people who care about it, that are giving you feedback, just listen to them, because they're taking the time to show up, not just to your events, but they're actually taking the time to show up intentionally in general. Give surveys, give reasons to give feedback, right? Sometimes we pay people to give feedback to us because we want to be, one, talked about, and we want to be referred to. We're getting more referral traffic than we have before because we're listening to people and we're addressing their needs within a week or two, right? And I'm not talking about a support ticket. I'm saying, like, if they refer us or give us a good idea for a feature that's going to help them save time, hours, days, months, etc., we will put that in our backlog and we communicate that, you know, thank you for your feedback. You know, we even give them, if we can't just give them a monetary amount of money right then and there or incentive, we discount their subscription for at least the next month or the next month or two, right? The point is, we want to, you know, applaud people for the feedback that they give, because that's what allowing us to leverage our community, right? Community also is another way to drive partnerships. I actually had an event, right, in April. It was called Creators Night Out, another kind of brands meeting creators kind of thing. But I also had a couple things going on. I had a panel really a fireside chat with Olivia from Houston's Creators Market. And one thing I like about Olivia is that she actually worked for a brand in the past, and she did marketing for them. It was like a cosmetics brand. And she ended up learning how partnerships help drive a lot of engagement and revenue. She has a community-based brand because these are creators market. So we ended up sponsoring them, and we were so impressed with the results on how they leveraged influencer marketing to sell out all of their creators markets, or mostly all of them. I think 80% of them was sold out in New York City, in New Jersey, in Brooklyn's in New York, and Houston as well. And she also had it in Miami, New Orleans, and LA. But she leveraged influencer marketing, and when you position it at the right time, especially for a community event, you really can sell out, because when you have the city talking about you, especially your target market, which hers was fashion creators, game changer. She literally was able to leverage these partnerships by giving people VIPs or general admissions, because a lot of people want to go, and she was able to drive that FOMO. Some of these were paid opportunities, some of these weren't. But from what she told us and disclosed to us in our Creators Night Out event is that she probably spent maybe about $1,000, and she was able to sell out her tickets and the vendor slot. So when I did the calculations, if they were pretty much correct, right, she was basically turning like $1,000 partnerships, right, and I mean in total, and 30 to 35xing her revenue. I mean, that is phenomenal. And they just kept using that content, kept reusing that content. They continue to still drive that content. And she said she put like 20 to 50 bucks behind the winning pieces of content and ran it in the Houston area to those interested in the same thing that those influencers talking about. Is fashion. These are fashion creator markets. So if a 20-something-year-old can do it, you know, who did leverage their skill set, right, because she knew partnerships was great. Doesn't mean she was like the most experienced influencer marketer, but she just learned how partnerships can help drive revenue through community. Then you got it, right? Because between the venue and then maybe the marketing spend she put in, and then obviously setup, she still was definitely profitable. And then she was able to do so much that she was able to go full time in having her creators markets. She is only like 25, 26 years old. Shout out to Olivia from Houston Creators Market. And that's why we enjoy partnering with them. Actually, we also did a giveaway for a CultureCon ticket with them. So thank you so much. And we were able to leverage their community, right? So I say that to say, like, we were able to leverage their community to drive engagement to our platform and vice versa. But also, we were also able to have an event with her on our fireside chat. And because of her success prior to her coming to the event, people were interested to hear, how is she doing this? She doesn't even live here, and she's selling out markets. There are people in Texas, in Houston, that have creative markets or weekly markets, monthly markets, bi-weekly, and they're not selling out. And that's not to say, like, that's not to shame them. It's just you're missing something. And it could be a couple of things. It could be your marketing. It could be your partnership. It could be your intentionality. People might just be confused, like, what's going on here? Why should I go here? Because I'll be honest, from the flyers to the content to the audience that's responding and engaging, people don't just want to leave the house anymore. Like, they want to leave for a particular reason, because we have options overload. We have tons of events that we can go to. So why should I attend yours? There's tons of this. There's tons of that. What makes yours any different? Especially when you're using the same people, right? It could be same DJ, same host. Like, if you're not switching it up, they already know what to look forward to. So are you driving community anymore? So people have to understand, like, when you're driving community, when you want to build community, you have to be intentional, because we are genuinely living in an attention economy that anything can grab a second of our attention, and we're like, I don't like this. Next, doom scrolling until I find the right thing. Though. And like I said before, if I'm on TikTok, I'm already doing some interest-based scrolling. If I'm on Instagram, which I'm on Instagram less than TikTok, I'm just kind of like, it's just more so awareness. And once I see something I don't like, I'm off of it. So you have to be intentional, because you need to grab that person's interest, especially the person you either one, want to attend your event, two, want money from, or three, you want the social capital from. Because see, the social capital comes from who is attending your event. Because if I know that, for example, I can go to an event and meet angel investors and venture capitalists. And if I'm a founder that's trying to raise money and I need to raise money by January, February, then I'm going to have my butt at those events. Intentionality. If I am, let's say, a vegan. In Florida, I was a vegan. Still considering going back. I was always at the vegan festivals. I was always at the vegan events because they're not even as common as like a regular barbecue and, you know, all that stuff, right? So when I went to like Vegan Dale, well, I already know what's going on. There's a bunch of vegan vendors. So I, as either a new vegan, an alkaline vegan, or even a mature vegan, get to go and experience this. And you already know who you can target to talk about it, right? Vegan foodies. Shoot, you can even target regular foodies because there's a lot of people who transition what they eat every day. Every day, people change their mind every day, from being meat eaters to vegan eaters, from being vegan eaters to meat eaters, whatever it may be. But veganism has grown a lot. There's more options being vegan nowadays than ever before. I'm at the point where I think I can even make like my vegan mac and cheese and not have a complaint. But ask me that 10 years ago, I wasn't even thinking about it because I'm like, ew, I don't want that. But because of what? Community, intentionality, events, and content, I believe that veganism is way more attainable. It's just really, honestly, in my opinion, just depends where you're at. When I moved from Florida, it was a bit harder because of where I lived in Texas. So it was the source, right, at the time, the convenience. It was never the fact of just being vegan because I've already learned that it's possible. I already saw how well my health was even being vegan, especially alkaline vegan, because Dr. Sebi taught us that. Dr. Sebi wrote books on that. Dr. Sebi created community around that in Honduras. If the older folks can create community, right, even with their retreats, because that's another community-led thing. Come on, let's talk about it, right? It's because of the intentionality. We don't go to these things just to say, well, some of us do just go to stuff just to say it, but it's still kind of driven by intentionality or FOMO. But I'll say this, I don't just go places just to go anymore. I go places because there's some intention behind it. So yes, it's harder to get people's attention, but with intention, you can do it. And then the last thing I want to talk about is budgeting, because a lot of people might be like, all right, Brie, I get it. You done preached to the choir. Now what? What if I don't have money? All right, that's why you start small. Intentionality doesn't have to always come at a high cost. Okay, this is where you have to start actually stepping outside the box and seeing, let's go back to the barter system, value for value. So let's say that I'm going to just give a happy hour example and then I'll let y'all go. But let's say that you want to have an event, and a community-based event where you're getting people interested in the same thing. Okay, I already gave out that run club idea. So, you know, I'm going to just pick back up on that. Let's say that I want to have a run club, get people signed up, right? And I will use their data, or I'll use their emails to retarget back later down the line to sell them the shorts. Have a free event, connect with a local coffee shop to see if you could do a meetup. They're not going to turn it down because you're driving them money, you're driving them revenue. Invite people out, create content about it, get a local influencer to come to the coffee shop and talk about the event, share it out, try to get maybe five influencers to share it out. Choose the best converting piece of content, maybe run a little bit of ad money behind that, RSVP on like Posh, another community-based app, for free, and have the event. Simple, just simple. You could run that play with a bar, a restaurant, or something else, but just keep it simple. And I'll leave y'all with that for today. Catch y'all later.